Good morning, class 11. In today's session, I'll be discussing with you the postulates given by Niels Bohr to describe his atomic model. And children, the postulates which was given by Sir Niels Bohr are very important, and there were almost all the postulates that he gave were correct, except for the few drawbacks, or you can say except for the few points which he couldn't explain, or the few limitation. But whatever he told about the structure of an atom were absolutely correct and formed a base for the formulation of quantum mechanical model which we are following today for an atom. And from where did he got an idea to give these postulates? Actually, it was the point where Rutherford failed. If you remember, children, in the previous videos I shared with you, or I discussed with you, the postulates given by Rutherford, or I described in those videos the important points that were put forth by Rutherford and where he failed. So basically, the main failure or the basic thing where Rutherford failed to explain his model was the stability of the atom. He couldn't explain the stability of the atom, was the first thing where he failed. And why he couldn't explain? Please recall those points that I told you. He compared his model with the solar system, and then Maxwell's theory couldn't hold the his comparison of the model with the solar system. Okay, so basically that was the point that Bohr he caught hold of that point and then introduced his model. And second, Rutherford couldn't explain the concept of spectra, which is a very essential part of chemistry these days. So let us see what are the postulates of Bohr's atomic model. The first postulate, which is known to all of us: atom has a center which is known as nucleus. So there was no extraordinary point or the key point in this particular postulate, because it was already discovered, or it was already put forth by the previous scientist. Now coming on to the next point: electrons revolve only in fixed circular orbits with fixed energy and fixed velocity. This is very important. First is, electrons revolve only in fixed circular orbits. That means electrons can never collide with the nucleus, can never come closer to nucleus. There is a particular limitation, there is a particular range up to which the electron can move, or up to which the electron can come when it is coming towards the nucleus. That is why it is said that the orbits are fixed circular. Okay, contrary to Rutherford's model, where according to his model, electron follows a spiral path, or the orbits are in the form of spiral path, where the electron will gradually, what will happen to electron? It will collapse, or it will collide with the nucleus, and the atom will on a whole, it will collapse. So then this was corrected by Bohr. He said that the electron revolve in fixed circular orbits, and the energy of the electron is fixed, and the velocity is also fixed. Then second is quantization condition. Okay, now from here the concept of quantization came into existence. So quantization condition says electron revolves in those orbits for which angular momentum is integral multiple, or a multiple of h upon 2 pi, like h upon 2 pi, 2h upon 2 pi, 3h upon 2 pi. Now what does it mean? It means that there are only certain orbits in which electron can exist. It is not like it can exist anywhere. Quantization means that electron can revolve only in those orbits where the angular momentum you must have done in physics, children. Angular momentum is represented by L, and whenever a body exhibit a circular motion, whenever it exhibit a circular motion, then the type of momentum which the body exhibit is known as angular momentum. when we are talking about the electron and its motion, obviously the type of motion which the electron undergoes is circular, so the momentum will be angular momentum. And when we talk about linear motion, then it is known as linear momentum. So these terms you will be doing in physics, or you must have done in physics. So the value of angular momentum should be some integer. Integral means should be some integer multiple of h upon 2 pi, which is a constant. And when we talk about integer, then the values of n can be 1, 2, 3 and so on. So if we substitute the value of n here as 1, then it will be h upon 2 pi. If it is kept as 2, then it will be 2h upon 2 pi. If it is 3, then it will be 3h upon 2 pi, then 4h upon 2 pi. Likewise, it will be continued. So, actually, L is equal to nh upon 2 pi. Angular momentum is equal to nh upon 2 pi, and n is some integer. Okay, and this corresponds to the shell number. This integer corresponds to the shell number. Please pay attention here. If suppose this is the nucleus, children, then this is the first shell. For this, the value of n is 1. Now for the second shell, the value of n is 2. So obviously the shell number will give you the value of integer, and by substituting those values you will get the orbits in which the electron can revolve. So this is very simple. We all know that when we represent the orbit number, it is n equals to 1, n equals to 2, 3 and so on, or k, l, m, n. Okay. So, and the formula for angular momentum is mvr. So, you can say that mvr is equal to nh upon 2 pi. So, basically you need to remember this. Only those circular orbits are permitted in which the value of angular momentum is nh upon 2 pi, where h is Planck's constant, we did in the last class, and h is 6.6 into 10 raised to the power minus 34 joule second. We did these. The value of Planck's constant is this. Okay. While revolving, the electrostatic force between electron and the nucleus provides the centripetal force. This is the balancing force actually. So when you see here that there is a positive charge in the center, and electron which is revolving outside the nucleus in circular orbits is having negative charge. So obviously when two oppositely charged bodies are in contact, they will attract each other, and that attractive force is known as electrostatic force of attraction. And this attractive force provides a balancing force which acts outward and is known as centripetal force. So basically these two forces balance each other in a way that electron is fixed in its position. Unless you are disturbing it, electron will remain fixed in its position unless we are providing any energy to the atom, or we are taking out the energy from the atom. So basically the electron remains balanced, contrary to the Rutherford concept. Okay, so these are actually corrections of Rutherford's failure. Now coming to the next point, while revolving in a particular orbit, an electron neither gains energy nor loses energy. That means the energy of the electron remains fixed. Again, adding to it, unless energy is provided to the atom from outside, an electron itself can neither lose energy nor gain energy. So energy of orbit or shell is fixed. That is why it is known as stationary energy level. This is a very important question for your exam also. Sometimes you may get a question at times that why the orbits or the shells are referred to as stationary energy levels, because they cannot lose or gain energy on their own. They have a certain fixed value of energy. Orbits, they have certain fixed value of energy which doesn't change. That is why it is known as stationary energy levels. Now coming to the value of Bohr's radius, there is a derivation behind this relation, but you don't have to go into the depth of the derivation. You simply need to remember the values here. So the Bohr's radius value is I will read out this: n square h square epsilon naught pi m z e square. Okay, so this is the value of Bohr's radius, where n is what? Shell number, h is Planck's constant, epsilon naught is again a constant, pi 22 upon 7 is a constant, m is mass of electron, z is the atomic number, e is the charge on electron. So these are the values. Okay, now most of the values you see here is constant. The only value which is not constant is n and z. It will depend upon the atom. So similarly, what I have done here, I have separated the constant values from this equation and have placed the non-constant value here. Now when you substitute the values of constants here, finally you will get the value of the constant of this particular constant as 0.53. Now this equation has got simplified for you to solve the numerical problems. Now this equation can be written as 0.53 n square upon z angstrom. The value that you will get, the Bohr's radius that you will get will be in angstrom. 1 angstrom corresponds to 10 raised to the power minus 10 meter. So I hope it is clear. Don't get confused with this complicated equation. You need to remember this, but it is important for you to know how did you get this formula. So radius of nth orbit is equal to 0.53, which is a constant, into n square upon z. N corresponds to the shell number or the orbit number. Z corresponds to atomic number. Okay. Now coming to the next point, but before this, let us see a simple numerical to make your concept more clear. Find the radius of first, second and third shell of hydrogen atom. Hydrogen atom means the value of Z, atomic number of hydrogen is 1. N value is different each time. Now when you substitute the values of n square upon z for r1, when you are calculating the radius of first orbit, r1 will be equal to 0.53 into 1 ka square upon 1 angstrom. This will give you 0.53 angstrom. R2 will be equal to 0.53 into 2 ka square upon 1. This will give you the value as 2.12 angstrom. R3 will be 0.53 into 3 ka square upon 1, which will give you 4.77 angstrom. So you can see how simple it is to calculate the radius of various orbits of any atom. Okay, if the atom mentioned here is helium, then this value, the value in the denominator, the value of Z will be 2. Similarly, the values will go on changing according to the atom which is given to you. Now coming to the next postulate, Bohr's velocity. For this, the velocity equation is Ze square upon 2h epsilon naught n. Again you can see here n and z are variable, rest everything is a constant. That is why constant values are separated and z upon n is separately written. When you solve this again, you will get a constant value 2.18 into 10 raised to the power 6, which corresponds to the solution of these. 2.18 into 10 raised to the power 6 into z upon n meter per second. So you have to remember this, children. These concepts are very important for your competitive exams also. Most of the times in IIT, in your NEET exam, you get the direct question based on this. So you have to remember this. There are many things that you need to remember in these postulates, the direct formulas. This is very important. So please, children, remember these formulas. It will help you in your competitive exams also. Now speed of electron in first orbit of hydrogen, if you have to find out. Very simple. Z is 1 for hydrogen and first orbit n value will be 1. By substituting the values, you'll get the answer as this. Okay. Now coming to the energy. Very, very important. Coming to the energy of electron. If you have to calculate the energy of electron, the value of kinetic energy is 13.6 Z square upon n square electron volt. This is the unit. Electron volt is the unit of energy. For subatomic particles, we preferably use this. Then potential energy is minus 2 into, that is twice of this in negative. Okay, minus 2 into 13.6 into Z square upon n square electron volt. So these are the two energies which are possessed by an electron in an atom. Now when you have to find out the total energy, What will you do? You'll sum up these two. On summing up these two values, the final answer to the total energy will come out to be minus 13.6 into Z square upon N square electron volt. So this is basically important for you in your class 11th level. Otherwise you need to remember these two separately also when you are thinking of some competitive examination, because at times it is asked to find out kinetic energy, potential energy separately, or total energy. Now again, Z corresponds to atomic number, N corresponds to shell number. So moving on to the next question based on it, a very simple question based on it. Question is to find out the total energy of electron in nth shell of hydrogen atom. You have to simply see that how is the energy changing in the subsequent shells when you are moving from n equals to 1 and then n equals to infinity. So total energy formula is this. When you substitute the value of Z is 1 for hydrogen, Bohr worked on hydrogen atom or hydrogen like atom. That means one electron atom. Basically he worked on those species or those atoms which had only one electron. Now one electron in neutral state is possessed by only hydrogen, and in case of other, if I say helium, it will be helium plus. Then similarly if I talk about lithium, then it will be lithium 2 plus. That means those in ionic state possessing only one electron. So by substituting the value here, the first shell will have an energy of minus 13.6 electron volt. Now substituting the values in the second shell, the answer will come out to be minus 3.4 electron volt. Similarly, I have substituted the values and got these values. So the formula for this is minus 13.6 Z square upon N square. Z remains same. N will go on changing depending upon the value of depending upon the shell number that we are talking about. You can see here what is happening. The energy is increasing as you are moving away from the nucleus. See, this has the lowest energy because it is in negative, and when you are moving away from the nucleus, the value of energy is increasing, right? You can see here. So what happens? A stage will be reached when you will be at n equals to infinity. The total energy will be 0, which is considered as the maximum energy of an electron in the nth shell, right? Because if you substitute the value of n as infinity in the denominator, when any number will have infinity in the denominator, the total number, the value of the total this fraction will be 0. So this is the maximum energy that an electron can have in an atom. Please remember this, children, it is very important. This total energy of 0 is the maximum energy that an electron can have in an atom. And also remember this when you are moving away from the nucleus. So when you are moving away from the nucleus, please remember this, children, the energy goes on increasing. The energy goes on increasing. You can compare the values, and it would be better if you remember these values. It will help you in future. These values are very important, and when you are in class 11, you have to think of your competitive exams also. This is your preparatory phase. So please, children, remember the values. If you can, it would be better. Okay. And then a stage is comes when the value becomes maximum, and at that level the value of n is infinity and the total energy is 0. Okay. So I'm stopping here. I hope you people have understood today's session, and then in the next session I'll be continuing with the Bohr's postulate only. Okay.